Coming to you from the sneaky city of board gaming, Omaha, Nebraska, welcome to the Out of the Dust podcast. I'm your host, Bryce the Rogue. Tied in with the popular recurring Out of the Dust geek list on Board Game Geek, the Out of the Dust podcast is a weekly podcast that is focused on re-exploring games we play that we hadn't previously played in a year or more. Why did the game get dusty? Why did you decide to dust it off? How does the game compare to how you remembered it? Are you likely to play it more often in the future? These are the questions that we're interested in examining on Out of the Dust. This week on the podcast, episode 38. On the Out of the Dust segment, I'll bring Portal of Heroes Out of the Dust, and a contributor will dust off Age of Steam. On the reaction segment, I recount my experience at PretzCon. On the What I've Been Playing segment, I review Wingspan. On the Obscure Bryce Game segment, I review Assault of the Giants. And we wrap up the episode by taking a look at where Coal Baron is now. I had a chance to bring Portal of Heroes, a 2015 Mayfair small box card game from designer Johannes Schmidauer, out of the dust. I last played it 1 year, 8 months, and 25 days ago at Origins as part of one of the last ribbon quests that Mayfair did before closing shop. I was impressed with the game then and added it to my wishlist. A copy connected with me in a math trade earlier in the year, and I recently got it to the table for a play with some friends during some downtime before our weekly Trivia Mafia showdown. I thoroughly enjoyed the game's engine building and set collection mechanics, but my friends were less impressed. Ah well, I'll try with some of my other groups in my family and see if it makes more of an impression with them. With that plan of action, it won't become dusty in the near future at least. Let's see what a contributor brought out of the dust. Matthias Marr, username Susubu, brought Martin Wallace's classic train game Age of Steam out of the dust recently. He writes, "It was not strictly a pile of shame game for me, but almost. Bought this game in late 2016, played a few solo games to practice the rules, and then a single two-player game of the Scotland map, December 30th of that year, which my cousin forfeited mid-game because I was running away. Now I finally got it on the table again. We were only 3 others, so I picked France, which seemed most reasonable at that low count. We all enjoyed it, and the game likely won't get such a thick layer of dust again for the time being. I put it on my 10x10 hardcore challenge, if only as an 11th replacement game, but still I hope to get some plays at higher player counts too. It was really good, and I think it has potential to shine even more with 5 or 6 on the right maps. Thanks for the contribution, Matthias. I am eagerly awaiting my Age of Steam Deluxe Kickstarter pledge later in the year. I think I'm going to make the game my next recurring monthly demo after I'm done going through all the Concordia maps. I hope you have a chance to try out all the maps at all the player counts you want too. Reaction segment time. Held every spring, PretzCon is one of Omaha's excellent local conventions. I usually get there right away for the start of the convention, but a work obligation had me arriving 4 hours later than usual, and it was killing me to be at work waiting to leave. A scheduling issue with the convention center had the convention in a side area over an ice rink rather than the usual banquet hall. It was a little chilly for the convention, but the extra space was nice, and the convention was less noisy as a result. Despite the late arrival, I still had time for my traditional Feld Friday marathon. I ran all of his new games, kicking off the marathon with Merlin with the Arthur expansion. I hadn't played the expansion yet, but enjoyed it quite a bit. The extra die the expansion brought into play slowed the game down some, but it was nice to have another die option, and Arthur's Rondel brought some interesting new choices to make to the table. Dealing with the picks in particular was a fun new addition. I finished a distant third when the winner was able to rack up a bunch of points the last round with some saved-up Merlin staffs. Next up was For Trajanum. I focused on gray buildings but had difficulty in accomplishing the Trajan tasks and had to settle for second. I was beginning to think going for the gray buildings was an unbeatable strategy, but the winner won comfortably by upgrading their slide bar and accomplishing the Trajan tasks multiple times each round. A blast for the evening was Carpe Diem. I rocked the edge points at the end of the game, but the lack of a large collection of chimneys did me in, and I had to settle for second again. Our friend Ashley, who often joins us for Feld Friday Marathon, wound up winning all 3 of the games. On Saturday, I mostly hosted sessions of some recent releases, many of which I've talked at length about here on the podcast. I kicked off the day with Assault of the Giants, which I'll tell you more about in the Obscure Bryce Game segment later this episode. Due to a sign-up error, I had to settle for a 5-player game instead of 6, but it was a really good game, and I managed my first victory of the convention during it. Then I taught a session of Australia. This game continues to impress me, and I just love it more and more each time I play. This time, all 4 players beat the old one score at the end, and we even took down tough old Cthulhu himself during the game. Despite collecting a fair amount of GOO trophy points, I finished a distant third. Next, I brought out Game of Gnomes, which is one of my favorite games to show off at conventions. The table presence of this one is stellar, and it's fun to see people's reaction to it as they walk by. Up next was The Reckoners. We had a full complement of 6 players for the session, and quickly lost. In fact, we lost so fast that we decided to play again, and we pulled out only the second victory that I've ever been a part of. My last scheduled game of the evening was Crusaders, Thy Will Be Done. I narrowly edged out my wife for a win. To wrap up the evening, our friend Beth talked us into a play-to-win session of Istanbul, the dice game. I'd heard some mixed reviews of this, and it wasn't really on my radar at all. But my wife and I had a really fun time with it, and I wound up purchasing it immediately on sale from Miniature Market following the end of the convention when we didn't win it on the play-to-win drawing. I kicked off Sunday with the PretzCon swap meet, where I was able to unload a handful of items I didn't want to keep in the collection anymore. In between sales, my wife and I played a couple of games from the play-to-win shelf. We tried Drop It, a dexterity game from Cosmos, and Skull King, a trick-taking game highly recommended by my friends over the Punchboard Paradise podcast. My wife and I enjoyed both of those thoroughly, and I added them both to my wish list right away, though I need to have bothered with Skull King because we wound up winning that one. The main event of Sunday was Pitch Car. I got a nearly complete set for my sons for Christmas, and I set up an epic track for a Sunday afternoon demo. It had twists and turns, a bridge, elevation changes, and even a pit. We always bring our sons to the local conventions on Sunday afternoons, where we man the Spielbound Board Game Cafe booth for the close of the convention, and I always like to schedule at least one demo for them to teach others. I thought Pitch Car would be a fun choice this time. We had a full slate of sign-ups for a full 8-car race, where I somehow maneuvered my own car to victory. I left the track set up the rest of the convention, and it was enjoyed frequently by passerby. While my sons tried some games they hadn't played before from the convention library, my wife and I joined my friend Caleb and his wife for a game of Coimbra to close out the convention with. The popular consensus is that traveling is the key to success in this game, but I wanted to try something different this time and really focused on building a strong economy so I could get in on all the endgame scoring tiles and maximize the effectiveness of some of the endgame scoring cards. This approach wound up being very effective this time, and I managed my first Coimbra win as a result. And that concluded my time at PretzCon. On the What I've Been Playing segment this week, I'm going to tell you my thoughts on Wingspan, the hot new game from Stonemaier and rookie designer Elizabeth Hargrave. Now, I was not initially interested in this game. Count me among those silly people who thought that birds were a boring theme for a board game. Despite the perfect track record of Stonemaier games and me loving every single thing they've published thus far, like a fool, I did not get on board the initial pre-order for Wingspan, a decision it did not take me long to regret. I learned the game at the birthday board game get-together Punchboard Paradise podcaster Clef shortly after Wingspan's release, and was immediately impressed with the game. I could see right from the start the exciting and infinite tableau-building possibilities of that huge deck of bird cards. After that game, I was on the lookout for a copy for my own collection, but as you know, copies of Wingspan are hard to come by. So fast forward a few months and Spielbound gets a handful of copies of the April printing of the game. Fortunately for me, they put these copies on the shelf right when I happened to be there, and I scarfed one up without hesitation. This was right before Easter, and I taught both my wife and my father-in-law the game that weekend. My wife and I have played it several times since. I'm going to assume that everyone has at least a fairly good idea of how this game works at this point, and we'll skip the gameplay overview for this one. Suffice it to say that Wingspan is an elegant design. It's easy to learn and teach, yet offers engaging and satisfying decisions for the whole game. Success comes from adaptive strategy, which is something that always appeals to me. I love reacting to what a game throws at me and trying to make the best of what I have to work with. Figuring out how best to combo the abilities of the birds and which ones to keep and which ones to get rid of for other purposes is a highlight of the gameplay. Does Wingspan live up to the hype? Yeah, it does! It's only been out for a few months now, but I will go on record as saying that we're looking at a new definitive gateway and modern classic game here. This is one that's going to stand the test of time and continue to be played and talked about for years to come. I speculated in an earlier episode that I thought Wingspan might have an outside shot of breaking into the BGG top 10. After playing it several more times, I'm more confident of that prediction than ever. Wingspan is the real deal, and I'm sure my friend Beth Cottam, who is an avid bird watcher, will be happy to hear this, but it has made me acknowledge that birds are pretty awesome after all. Obscure Bryce game segment time. On the segment this week, I'm going to tell you about Assault to the Giants, a D&D themed area control game from publisher WizKids and designer Andrew Parks of D&D and Star Trek Attack Wing fame. The D&D adventure games are satisfying dungeon crawling staples, and other D&D themed games like Lords of Waterdeep and Tyrants of the Underdark have enjoyed both critical and commercial success over the years. But Assault to the Giants has flown under the radar from the very beginning of its release and is currently getting less than 10 log plays a month. Here's how it works. Players take control of one of 6 races of giants, like stone giants, fire giants, or storm giants, and attempt to win the greatest amount of ordning points by defeating other giants in battle and fulfilling quests. Players choose actions via a hand of cards a la Concordia, played actions staying on the table until a particular card recalls all the cards back to hand. The innovative thing about the Assault to the Giants system is that the played cards go into a row and grant either stronger actions depending on how many cards have already been played, or passive effects that get stronger the more cards that are played after them. In addition, each race has a unique action that helps the race score ordning points in a thematic way to their type of giant. Together with fulfilling quests and defeating other giants in combat, the personalized action cards make 3 ways of scoring ordning points. Like Crusaders, when the pool of points is depleted, the end game is triggered. I've been impressed with my initial couple of plays of Assault to the Giants. The premium edition with the nice painted miniatures was on sale for a ridiculous price in one of the online Black Friday sales. I had my cats pick it up for me for Christmas. It looks great on the table and wound up being a good pick for the convention. I really like the tactical decision-making inherent in the action card system by balancing the strength of an action with the timeliness of using it. Due to the minimum player count requirement, this isn't likely to become a frequently played game for me, though. But it's one I'm going to have ready to suggest for higher player count occasions. It plays surprisingly briskly for an area control game, the handle's up to 6, and the action is fast and furious. On the Where's the Game Now segment, we're going to take a look at Coal Baron, the 2013 Essen release of powerhouse designers Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling. Publisher R&R Games brought this one over to North America in early 2014. There was enough buzz for the game at Essen 2013 for it to just barely sneak onto the most purchased list for October of that year, but it has never appeared on any most played or top up-and-comers list. Initial reviews were mostly positive, if not glowingly so. But this appears to be a case where the game has steadily increased in critical reception. It currently sits at number 504 overall, which is good enough for the 13th overall Essen 2013 position, sitting between the popular Bang the Dice game and Legacy: The Testament of Duc de Crécy. Obviously, Bang the Dice game dominates in the current play per month comparison between these 3 games, but both Coal Baron and Legacy stack up very similarly to each other. They both have almost the same number of total log plays at this point, and both enjoy 40 to 50 log plays a month, which is quite respectable for 5-year-old games. For myself, despite the pedigree of the designers, Coal Baron was not initially on my radar when it released. If coal mining is not the most boring theme there is, then it's right up there. I didn't become exposed to the game until I participated in someone else's demo of it. And then I realized how well the theme actually fits the mechanics of Coal Baron. Part of that is due to how well the mechanics utilize the components of the game. The movable elevator that transports mined resources still remains a very neat element. It's certainly not what Euro games are known for, but I wouldn't mind seeing more of them in the future use components in a clever way like Coal Baron did. Coal Baron appears to have withstood the test of time, both critically and popularly, if not commercially, and it looks like this one will still be in the top 1,000 in another 5 years. Well, that will do it for episode 38. Thanks for listening. Feel free to join the Out of the Dust Podcast Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Follow the podcast on Twitter at OutOfTheDustBGG. Leave a comment